This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the Acer Aspire S7. This is the S7 11.6-inch model, the Dash 191, for those of you who keep track of such things. Core i5 inside, 1080p display touchscreen, also 2.29 pounds, really light, really thin, nice metal top right here, and we're going to look at it now. So this is the Acer Aspire S7. It's available now. It's actually been out for a couple of weeks. 2.29 pounds, as I said, full Windows 8 laptop, 64-bit with an Intel Core i5 inside. Now, when it first came out, it came out with the usual 1.7 gigahertz 3317U, that's a ULV CPU, and it's going to get a minor refresh going up to 1.8 gigahertz. So basically, you're looking at the same CPU technology, Ivy Bridge, third generation inside. Not a biggie, but again, you might find something just a slight bit faster in stores as a result. This guy has 4 gigs of RAM inside and 128 gig SSD, oddly configured in a RAID 0 configuration. Not that that matters to most of you folks unless you're kind of on the technical side there, but don't know why Acer decided to do that. They just probably thought they were going to get better speed or something like that out of it. Anyway, very fast SSD drive. This is a 1080p 11.6-inch display, and it is a touchscreen. Woohoo! So, nice and easy to use with the new Windows 8 modern UI, as I call it, with the live tiles, formerly known as Metro. And we have a full backlit keyboard here. It's an electroluminescent kind of keyboard, just glows in a nice little yellow-green, eerie sort of way, but it's effective enough. In dim lighting, not a lot of contrast with the silver and that color backlighting, but if it's fairly dark, it works pretty well. And you've got a decent-sized trackpad right here. This is made by Elan. Really, Synaptics is still my favorite so far in terms of gesture support. It behaves pretty well for single-finger tracking. Multi-touch gestures are decent. You can do things like the swipe in from the side, but as you can see, it can be a little hard to trigger sometimes, those side gestures, and they are kind of key. We won't complain too much because, obviously, you can just do that, touch the screen, so with not too much suffering going on there. It's also a full Windows 8 PC. You've got the Windows desktop. Of course, you'll even get that with Windows RT, but you can do things like install all of your Windows 7 programs here. That means EXE programs meant for the x86 architecture. So it's a very capable computer, yet it's incredibly light. It's a little bit lighter than the MacBook Air 11.6-inch, and it's about the same weight as a lot of just pure slate tablets that have Core i5s like the Surface Pro and Acer's own Iconia W700, which is about the same size and weight. Pretty amazing there, considering that you get, well, full keyboard and a full design. It has a 2-position. It's a little stiff here, so you can poke at it without wobbling around, pretty stiff. And then there's a second détente, and then it gets a little easier, and you can push it that far back. Since this is an IPS display with 178-degree viewing angles, you probably don't need all that much leeway for moving the screen back, but it's nice to have, just depending on what position you want to use it in. Since it is so small and light, you can use it just about anywhere. If you take a look at the keyboard up close now, you can see what the layout's like. All pretty much normal stuff right here. They've done an interesting thing where they've kind of mated the insert visually with the Enter key. Doesn't really affect usability at all, but full keyboard, not a super lot of travel. Let me hold this sideways so you can see that. It's a real skinny machine, so you're not going to get a lot of key travel. I did get used to it. I'm a fast touch typist, but I would hope for more key travel. But what can you do? Look how skinny this machine is. Wouldn't want to give that up either. Really nice looking. Got an aluminum lid here with a little bit of a brushed pattern. Depends on the light as to whether you can see there or not. In person, it's pretty obvious. Side here we have a USB 3.0 port. That's our little charging port right here. That's our power button. The bottom, however, is plastic, white plastic. The same thing is true of the S7 13.3-inch model. Plastic on the bottom. That guy has a white glass lid up top. Also pretty thin and pretty light. We've got air vents over here, lots of them. Air vents coming out the back. Acer has a twin turbo kind of cooling system, they call it. It's not too loud. It's definitely improved over some older Acers we saw that had a similar cooling kind of situation going on, and this generally does not get loud at all. Micro HDMI port is right back there. Dolby Home Theater stereo speakers. This guy sounds surprisingly good for such a tiny notebook. I really enjoyed actually watching movies on it. And on the other side, we have a USB 3.0 port again for a total of 2. That's kind of nice compared to just straight tablets that usually have one. This one can also charge devices. 3.5mm combo audio jack right there, and a micro SD card slot. Kind of a little too small for a full-size SD card slot, but at least we have micro SD, so that's pretty handy for everybody who has a smartphone with a micro SD card inside, and you want to take a look at your photos. But wait, there's more. You know, with the higher-end items, Acer likes to bundle a whole lot of goodies in the box, and Comes with this battery here. This is a 3-cell 2500 milliamp extended battery. Really unique design. I have to say they're not afraid to try things out. It's got a little spring-loaded mechanisms because you're going to put it on, you're going to actually stretch it out a little bit, and this goes into the power jack. I'll show you how that works. By the way, it only weighs 6.6 ounces, that battery, so it's not like some of those sheet batteries that really make something very heavy and cumbersome. So here we stick it into the power jack right there, and then stretch. And you see that spring opens up, and then there's a little locator hole there. And then on the bottom, there are these little screw locks, sort of like Sony likes to use. So you can screw down and lock it on there, make sure it doesn't wobble off. And it has a little cutout so the HDMI jack is still accessible. So it actually gives you a kind of, well, odd look from the back, doesn't it? But it gives you a nice angle for typing. And it doesn't add much weight. So a little freaky, but also a little innovative, and we won't complain. Because the battery that's inside the laptop itself is 3790 milliamps. Not that much, that 4-cell battery capacity there. And battery life, just like with the 13.3-inch one, S7, well, it's not that great. This is about 3.5 hours on a charge without the extended battery. The extended battery adds about another hour and a half, and then you get to a pretty reasonable 5. And since the whole thing is still pretty small and pretty light, we won't scream too much about that, but that does hobble the notebook itself just a bit. It's amazingly small, it's amazingly thin, and that means there's amazingly little room for a battery inside, so you're just not going to get really long run times. But wait, there's more. You get this here handy Bluetooth mouse. And it sure includes a AAA battery to keep it powered up. And we have dongles. Here we have a VGA dongle that goes into your USB port, and we have an Ethernet adapter for those of you who need wired Ethernet in the box. You don't have to go buy one. And the charger itself is a pretty compact white looking thing. This is actually the same one that's used with the Iconia W700 Windows tablet too. We get a carrying case as well, and this one is distinctly less ugly than the one that comes with the W700 tablet, which was a shiny brown vinyl nastiness. This thing almost looks and feels like leather. I doubt that it is. Doesn't smell too bad. Little envelope style case, Velcro holding it on so you can wake up everybody on the airplane who's sleeping when you open it up. Simple, straightforward. Again, it's nice to have it included. And not too heavy also. That's another good thing. Pretty important when you got a light notebook like this. You don't want to have a case that weighs 2 pounds. And now we've got it beneath Acer Iconia W700. That's their Windows 8 full-core i5 tablet. You can see, really, you're looking at about the same footprint, and actually the laptop is a teeny bit thinner. It's pretty amazing, right? So this guy is just a pure tablet. You can see our review of that one as well. The Aspire S7 sells for $11.99, so not too ungodly expensive for the price. Certainly cheaper than the higher-end S7 13.3-inch. That one, if you go with the Core i7 ULB, that can go as high as $1,650, and it's around $1,300 for the 13.3-inch one if you go with the i5. So this guy is actually more affordable too. The laptop has a 720p webcam up here with a built-in microphone, and it has dual-band Wi-Fi 802.11b and that's Atheros Wi-Fi, not Intel, so no WiDi wireless display here. It has Bluetooth 4.0. Does not have a GPS, but you know, it's a laptop form factor. We don't expect to see that so much. Nor is there NFC in this guy. Right now, I don't think that a lot of people are going to be crying about that either. Has Intel HD 4000 integrated graphics like any Ultrabook would, and basically you're looking at Ultrabook brains here. In terms of performance, we'll take a look and see what our Windows Experience Index is. For processor, we have 6.9. For RAM, we have 5.9, and this is all on a scale of 1 to 9.9. For graphics desktop, we have 5.4. 3D gaming graphics, 6.3, and the SSD scores 8.3, which is pretty good. Usually we see 8.1 with the fastest SSD drive, so no slouch on storage speed here. On PC Mark 7, it scores 4728, which is right in line with other Core i5 Ultrabooks on the market. So that's good to see. Even though this is pretty thin and not as much room for cooling and heat dissipation, it scores just as well. It's not doing a whole lot of thermal throttling. We like to see that. Speaking of heat, the plastic bottom does have its advantages. It does not get wickedly hot to the touch. Ultrabooks with ULV CPUs generally don't get real hot. There's a few exceptions to that, but this guy, even when you're doing something like streaming HD video playback 1080p, in fact, since it has a 1080p screen, that's a worthwhile endeavor, does not get too hot to the touch. That is, it stays under body temperature. The IPS touchscreen is very nice looking in terms of colors. It's got pretty good contrast. Sharpness is quite good though. In the desktop, we've already changed the scaling to 125% because Acer ships it at 100%, and these icons are like, teeny tiny, impossible to see, and so is text. I actually find it's still a little hard to read some text even at 125%, where I don't feel that way with some other 11.6-inch machines. So interesting there about the clarity. But the contrast and the colors are all good, and the touchscreen is very responsive too. It works just fine for all sorts of gestures, pinching, zooming, fast enough. Works nicely. As I mentioned, the speakers are better average. I'm going to try out a 1080p MPEG-4 high-profile trailer so you can hear what that sounds like. So it's 62% volume. It's very loud. Good sound.
It will be every man for himself.
Plays it perfectly well, as you'd expect. So definitely a capable multimedia machine. You can even do some light HD video editing, though. A Core i5 ULV CPUs and Ultrabooks, they're not as fast as full mobile CPUs. If that's something that you do professionally or spending 20 hours a week doing, you probably still want to consider a full mobile CPU. But for your occasional video editing, it can handle it. And for desktop mode, we can do things like run Photoshop. We're going to take a look at that. So now we have Adobe Photoshop CS6 running, the latest version. And you can see that Adobe Photoshop, like a lot of Windows apps, doesn't really pay any attention to the Windows desktop scaling settings. So you have room for all sorts of palettes and all sorts of things like that, but you can see what the size of the menu text is like over here, and your little tool icons, they're pretty darn teeny, so you want to have good eyes to use this machine. 1080p on an 11.6-inch or smaller machine, well, you got to have good eyes. The good point is you get really sharp text. You can see a lot of detail in photos, so of course there's an upside to that too. Really depends on what you're looking for and how good your eyes are. So we have a JPEG file here, and this is a 20 meg image, and we're going to see how quickly it can handle things. We're going to do a couple of things to this image. So first we're going to do a rotation here, fast enough, and then we'll apply something like unsharp mask, and go with the default 50%. No problem, quick enough, and we'll resize that image down to just 500 pixels. Shadow of its former self. Very quick, so certainly very responsive, works just fine. Desktop apps are good, software development applications. Obviously things like streaming video, YouTube, Netflix, all that stuff's going to work fine too. Your Office suite, whether you install 2010 or 2013, it's a go on this. Now, one thing to keep in mind for your graphic artist types, this is just a touch screen. 10 points of multi-touch here. There is no digital pen, no Wacom, no N-Trig, none of that stuff. So graphic artist, this probably isn't the machine for you. But then most of you would probably go for something that was more of a convertible in design, so you could use it like a tablet or a pure tablet itself. Now, when it comes to games, of course, it can run all the stuff that's available for the Windows 8 Microsoft Store live tile kind of games, and some of those are actually pretty nice 3D games. And you can install older games on this, regular Windows 7 games that is, Rise of Nations. Even Civ 5 is going to run fine, but like all Ultrabooks, this is not a gaming machine. It just has integrated graphics, so sorry, no Crysis for you, no Crysis 2, and Call of Duty latest version, not so much really. But you could get away with running something like Skyrim. If you drop the resolution down, say 1366 by 768, you'll get some pretty decent frame rates there with low settings. So who's this product for? Well, anybody who travels a lot, who's on the go, who hates heavy laptops. At 2.29 pounds, man, you just don't even feel this thing. It's just a little bit heavier than some tablets on the market, yet you have a full notebook in terms of form factor and a reasonably usable keyboard. Certainly, I would say it's better than the Sony Vaio Duo 11 convertible, which has very tiny keys, even though this has low key travel. It's powerful. It could be your main machine. It has an external HDMI connection, so if that little 1080p screen gets to be a little tiring for your eyes, well, plug it into an external monitor. Anybody who wants a powerhouse and 11.6 inches and 2 pens, well, this is a machine for you. There's really nothing on the market that competes with this except for the 11.6-inch MacBook Air. So that's the Acer Aspire S7 11.6-inch model. Honestly, a really nice machine for the money. For those of you who know that you need the keyboard, not just a touchscreen, and you're thinking between this and a tablet, well, now you've seen what it has to offer. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.